Hello, friends. This is my walking tour. My name is Giovanna Rezavuto, and I made this walking tour for my Macaulay Honor Seminar, People of New York. I go to Macaulay Hunter. So this is my final project for the term, and it's a walking tour of my home neighborhood, Park Slope. The tour is about 2.6 miles long, and it's about an hour and 20 minutes. The format is you walk and I tell you where to walk and you listen to me. And I talk about the people of Park Slope and the forgotten history. And I define forgotten history as things that I don't know because I've lived here for 18 years. So I should probably know it, been here a while. That's basically my project. It starts on at the Union Street station, which is the R train station in Brooklyn. I don't care what Google Maps says unless there's road changes. The D and the N do not stop there. It says it all the time that it does. It does not. Unless there's actual subway service changes and they go express to local. The tour ends at the 4th Avenue 9th Street station, which has the R train, the F train, and the G train, as well as buses. So I tried to make it close to transportation so that it was easy to get there. Basically, it starts right away. So I would start the tour when you're already at Union Street. I hope you enjoy listening to my tour and have fun. Bye. Hello, my friends. So I'm here at the Union Street station. I'm on the Bay Ridge side at President Street. And real quick, if you look across the street, or if you're coming from the Manhattan side, you can see Blick Fitness Center. If you didn't know, this was, and you can kind of see it on the top, it says public bathhouse, and it has a men's and women's side. It was made for immigrant communities who used to live in Park Slope because there was a lot of tenement houses and there was no requirements to have indoor plumbing. So they made this, and then soon they were like, oh, well, we need indoor plumbing, don't we? So it no longer was necessary. So I'm still walking along 4th Avenue, by the way, walking towards President Street and then towards Garfield. So I just passed by, but you can look back if you need to. Anyway, the building was landmarked. It was going to be destroyed, and luckily they landmarked it. They actually restored it, so you can look at it and you can, so I just stopped and I'm looking back now. You can see that there are some cracks that they filled in, and if you want to pause and go closer and examine, you can, but it was restored. It was made into a gym, and then it was made into a different gym. So now it's a different gym. So that was just, right out of the train station, a nice little thing about Park Slope. So I'm coming up on Garfield Street now. I'm almost there. So we are going to take I forget my left and right. We are going to take a left here. Actually I'm at Carroll Street. I don't know my own neighborhood that well, So we're going to keep going until Garfield. Across the street, if you can, we want to get on to the same side as the bathhouse. So if you were on the other side, you want to cross. So, yes. So you might hear that it's raining. You might hear a lot of traffic in the background. That's because I am actually walking this as I say it, and it is currently raining, which is rather unfortunate. And I'm in the middle of the street and the cars are about to go. So now I'm running. It's kind of cool because right now you're walking the exact same thing. The only thing that separates you and me right now is time. And someone is just watching this spot on the street over and over. They'll see me one day and then they'll see you. And that's really why I'm doing this. I want to see the people who walked in these streets before me. Before all the yuppies too, because there's a lot of yuppies. So that's really why I'm doing this, and I think that's really cool to find out, who used to walk here, what interesting stories and stuff happened. Because it's important that we know history, and it's also interesting. So I'm on Garfield now. I crossed the street and I made the left turn. So I'm going uphill right now. There's construction where I am. So the sound of rain probably went away for a little bit. This street to start off lighthearted, this street is where Al Capone grew up. Al Capone, the famous mobster. I'm sure you've heard of him. Got caught for tax evasion, but was a really bad guy. Lived on multiple houses in this block. He lived on 21, 36, and 46 Garfield Place, which are all on this block. In addition, I have a little friend named Grace, shout out to Grace, who also lived on this block. She now lives in California. But yes, so this is where Al Capone grew up. He was born in 1899, and he moved to Chicago in 1919. So I'm still just walking up the block, by the way. I'm trying to find the actual numbers because I did the research. So I just found 20. So across the street is 21. One of his houses just was on the market for $2.9 million, which, yes, is very expensive, especially because these houses are not huge. Most of them are 2 or 3 floors, big in New York, not big in most other places. And there were a lot of rumors that he left money in the walls of one of his houses, one of his 3. One of them also recently just went under construction renovation, so they obviously didn't find any money there. But there are still rumors, so if you want to put down a nice $2.9 million and perhaps make a nice $2.9 million, this is your chance. Yeah, so that's Al Capone. Also, an interesting fun fact about him is that he stopped school in the 6th grade because he was hit by one of his teachers, fought back, and then hit by his principal. So he just left school and never went back. And there's actually, what I found throughout all my research of Park Slope, is that there has a lot of history of teenagers, particularly middle schoolers, participating in gang and gangster violence. Although most of that does take place much after Al Capone, but it does still seem to be a recurring theme of the area. So I'm now almost at the corner of Garfield. So we're at 5th Avenue and Garfield. 5th Avenue, you should know, is the main shopping center of Park Slope, along with 7th Avenue. 6th Avenue is residential. Most of the side streets, the long blocks like we're walking right now, are also residential. So on the corner, I see Crazy Good Burgers and Cause Cafe. That's how you know you're in the right place. I'm going to be taking another left turn. So while it is raining today, it is also a weekend, and the streets are actually closed along 5th Avenue for the open streets because it is still the pandemic. No matter what people say, this is 2022, I'm saying it, but don't at me. It's still a pandemic. I'm wearing a mask right now as I walk. But either way, I just made a left turn. I'm walking, and I'm walking in the streets because the restaurants take up the street space. It's a rather nice thing that happens. But this area that we're in now, 5th Avenue. So we're gonna keep walking until Sterling Street. Sterling Street, there is a place called Mitty Mitty there. I just wanna make sure you don't walk too far, because then you're gonna have to walk back. And there should be like a big open lot if you're listening to this close to when I am. Yes. Either way, I'm now at Carroll Street. I'm waiting to cross the street. But this area right here kind of ties into what we just heard about Al Capone and gang violence. So Park Slope used to be, whether it still is debatable, but a rather diverse place. And filled with a lot of, I'm still waiting to cross the street. Oh my God, cars, move faster. And it was filled with a lot of gangs and gang violence, mainly with children who were in middle school, which is rather young. So it was not thought of as a prosperous place. I don't know if you know of perceptions of Park Slope now, but now Park Slope is thought of as one of the best neighborhoods to live in. If not New York City, then like the entire world. People love Park Slope. It is very expensive here. But just 70 years ago, it was not thought as a very prosperous place. And these blocks that we're walking right now were thought to be the worst in the neighborhood. And the reason that is because this is where a lot of black people lived. And not saying that black people are more violent. What actually happened is that there was a lot of gang violence against black people in this neighborhood. So right now I'm at President Street, and I'm trying to find that address on my little note sheet thingy, and I'm not finding it. But at one of the houses right along here, along President Street, there was a big fight that broke out against an Italian gang and a black gang. Bricks and bottles were tossed from the roof. I read a New York Times article about it from when it happened, so from 40 years ago. And it was rather violent. It made the news, obviously, and a similar fight broke out in East New York at the same time. The kids were middle schoolers from MS 51. Back then it was called JS, junior high school, instead of middle school 51. So they were middle schoolers and they were fighting. And that's just one instance of gang violence. Much worse scenario happened on Carroll Street, which we just passed, so I'm still walking, and I'm almost at Union Street now. But a much worse scenario happened at Carroll Street, where there was a building there that housed 8 black families. It was like a black-only building. Wait, I'm like holding my umbrella now, and it's raining, and I have to flip my paper, which is now soaking wet. So, love this for me. Anyway, I am still walking. And so 8 black families lived in 655 Carroll Street. And the sad thing that happened is that multiple explosive devices were left in the building by a white gang. They were pretty sure who did it because there were middle school children, white middle school children, yelling very offensive terms towards the families after the detonation went off. There was a torn shirt hanging with ketchup on it. It was meant to symbolize blood. The police were pretty sure that it were these kids. Whether they got arrested, brought in, or anything like that, I can't say. About the gang on President Street, 14 of the black children were brought in by the police. 3 of the Italians were. Only 1 had to stay. I don't think any of them got any time. It did not say anything about the 14 black children that were taken out. But this bombing was really bad, and the mayor was actually spoke out against it. Took the black families to a hotel to stay. And this really happened in a time, it happened in the 60s, where the racial tensions were really building, especially in Park Slope. They were really building, and it just went on, and it was the most serious attack of the time. No one was hurt, luckily. No one was hurt, but it was not a good thing, obviously. And there were people on both sides, not to play devil's advocate, but there were people on both sides saying that they didn't feel safe from the other people being there. The white boys did try to blame everything on the black families, which was not the case, and the bomb squad proved that too. And both sides also claimed being harassed at everyone else.
Who spoke out against the attacks, however, was a senator that got involved and brought the families to a hotel. In addition, it did not happen in the 60s. The bombing was in August of 1976.
All this is to say that the racial tensions were just clearly building in the area at the time, especially along these couple of blocks that we're still walking. I'm almost at Lincoln Place, by the way. The streets are still closed and very nice now, but to think that there was yelling on these streets, there were riots, there was bricks being thrown out of the doors, and there were people who felt so unsafe that the mayor,
Senator,
I would never think the mayor would do this. Maybe a bombing, but the mayor just doesn't get involved in things like that. So they were brought to a hotel to stay safe. It really shows a lot, and everything was just the tensions were just rising and rising and rising during this time. And they're tensions that this neighborhood does not see now so explicitly. We will come back later to other regions where I feel some of these tensions still exist, but they're more tensions due to inequity, not due to literal just racial violence and you know, you can say terrorism. It was not good. All of that is very sad and very hurtful to hear, because one of the reasons I wanted to learn about this area is because my family came as an immigrant, and we were in this area during that time, not when the eventual gentrification, we'll come back to that shortly, started in the 70s. So I wanted to learn more about what my family might have done here. I do know that they had dealings with the mafia at times, but I wanted to learn more about what life would have been back then. And to learn that, and that these streets are not as perfect as they seem, and how there's this hidden history there. It's, you know, it's hard to hear, but it's important to know and not to forget, clearly. So I'm still walking, and I'm almost at St. John's Place, which, if you're on the other side of the street, is Douglas. You're gonna want to cross the street. Eventually, we're going one more little block, and if you can see, I don't know, because it might be luxury condos now, but I see a large empty lot that is under construction. What this used to be is a Key Food. It was a very big supermarket, and it was very necessary for the people who live in this part of the neighborhood, because there's not many supermarkets here, especially not big ones. Maybe a lot of organic little delis that charge $7 for 2 eggs. But, you know, Key Food was Key Food. It had good prices, and a lot of people went there. And the Key Food is gone, and now it is going to be luxury condos, which is another recurring theme in Park Slope's history. I did mention, as we were going through these last couple of blocks, that there was a lot of immigrants in this area, that it was not desirable. That is no longer the case. So why is that? Well, this Key Food really demonstrates that. So I'm at Sterling now, so I am making a right, and we're walking uphill 2 avenues. So this is a little section for 2 avenues called Gentrification Park Slope. Gentrification, if you do not know, is the process of making an area wealthier, making it nicer, making it better. What it actually means and signifies is kind of hard to define, and there's a lot of research papers on it that actually define it and actually say if an area has gone through gentrification. Park Slope, officially, by research standards, was gentrified in the 90s, as in that's when they officially confirmed gentrification had happened. Obviously, it is a long process, and it's one of the reasons why there's not immigrants here anymore. I mean, not that large of a population. There's not many black people. There's not many Spanish people. There's a lot of white people and a lot of gay people. But that's about it. So why did we lose this culture and these people? And that's gentrification. Gentrification may sound nice because you're making an area nicer. Park Slope is very nice now. It's very safe, very expensive, but it's very nice and safe and desirable. But in the process to get there, we have, well, not we, but the gentrification, which started in the 70s, by the way, has pushed out the lower class peoples. In 1988, there were people complaining about how they felt that the area had changed and was gentrified, and it led to black, brown, and poor people just being kicked out. And they were, in 1988, as we are now, complaining about the yuppies. They also said that the racism in the area was definitely de jure. De jure, meaning that it wasn't written in law, but it was still happening. That is seen through things like redlining, where certain people can't move into certain areas, partially because the prices, partially because the real estate will just not show them those houses. Does not happen now, not legally, but it's one of the reasons why New York is so segregated, and the gentrification in this area really pushed a lot of those people out. So not only, and I'm still walking now, not only is Park Slope considered to be gentrified, it's now entering, or has been entering, a phase that they call super gentrification. The area has become so gentrified, it's being re-gentrified again. Not only are lower class people being pushed out and moved in by middle class people, a sign of gentrification, middle class people are being pushed out by the upper class people, which is kind of whack, kind of crazy. Middle class people can't even make it here anymore. A lot of them are moving out. There's more actors, more bankers, more millionaires. I mean, the houses literally cost millions of dollars. Those people are moving in. The middle class people are moving out. And with those changes bring even more demographic changes. That being seen, the population in Park Slope has changed, obviously due to gentrification, but also just due to time. Places change. No one's denying that. Since 2000, the city's black population has decreased 7%. Park Slope's black population has decreased 50%. And while the city's Latin population has increased since 2000, 7%, Park Slope's Latin population has decreased 22%. This is again showing how the gentrification, how pushing people out really is affecting the demographics. So I'm still walking. I just crossed 6th Avenue. I'm going up to 7th Avenue. So number streets are pretty easy to follow, but gentrification. Another form of gentrification is new build gentrification. This is when old buildings are taken down and rebuilt. So you might be walking, you might be seeing some really modern buildings in a sea of brownstones and not modern buildings. That's new build gentrification. And the key food represents that. The key food represents them taking down a building, one that the people really need the key food, because we need food, right? We need to eat. Either way, that they're taking it down, they're making luxury condos. They are reserving a certain percent of the apartments that they make. And if you saw the lot, it's a really large area, very big. So they are reserving a certain spot for low-income families. How that will be implemented, can't really say. Normally, when buildings like this try to implement parts for lower-income people, that usually means giving them worse apartments that aren't as nice, or who even knows what they consider to be low-income anymore. That might be just middle class, because they're also being pushed out. You can't afford this neighborhood anymore. What this also comes along with gentrification is old shops closing down. The new people that come, the new demographics might not be into there was also a lot of Puerto Ricans in Park Slope, so they might not be into the Puerto Rican shops, or the black shops, or the Irish and Italian shops. Those were the main immigrant communities in the area in the 50s that by the 70s either had become white, so to speak, or were no longer in the area. So old shops are forced to close down because they don't have the business or can't keep up paying the rent, and this really kills culture. And this is what I feel in Park Slope. I feel I have no real connection here. I can't connect to the yuppie moms. I'm not rich. So there's no really culture for me. It's not like I talk to people on the street that I know or things like that. It's really just the place I live. And my home is my home, but my neighborhood is not my home. And I don't feel it represents me. Perhaps if these shops were still around, I would still feel that way. In addition, the demographic changes. We said this, we showed already how the demographic has changed since 2000, which is when gentrification had already happened and a second wave had started. So sometimes these families are literally pushed out by prices. Other times they're pushed out just because it's not their home anymore and they want to be around people who are like them. So this is another way in which gentrification, whether it literally pushes people out or it it doesn't actually financially push them out, it still leads to less types of people being here. So right now, I'm on 7th Avenue, Sterling Street, place, and we're gonna stop here for a couple of minutes because some crazy events transpired on this corner, in this area, on this block. On December 16th, 1960, a plane crashed here. The area looks perfect now. You may not see any of the damage from 1960 here, but try to look at some of the buildings. Maybe you see a couple of rows of bricks that are new. You see some cracks that are filled in. You see a newer building and a sea of older buildings. I'm gonna be honest, I can't really tell. But the article said that was there. But a plane crashed here. So 2 planes flying in Staten Island crashed. One of them went down in Staten Island. The other one kept trying to go and came here and crashed here. Sadly, if you look up, the park is 2 avenues away. They didn't make it there, so they crashed here. Everyone on board on both of the planes from Staten Island and here was immediately killed, except for one boy named Stephen Boltz. So Miss Dorothy M. Fletcher was kind of a hero in this situation and started looking for survivors and found this Stephen Boltz, this 11-year-old, brought him to the hospital. Everyone else, again, died on impact. He, as well, did not survive. He only lasted a day, but his family was able to say goodbye to him before then because his parents were not on board. And it's a rather tragic story, and if you go to Methodist Hospital, which we're not going to visit on this tour, but if you go to Methodist Hospital and go into the chapel, which is as soon as you walk in, you can see his coins there. The coins that were in his pocket. They're in a commemorative place to him. So we're going to continue walking now. We're still going to talk about the crash, but we're going to turn right and go 1 little block. And then we're going to go uphill. So real quick, before we continue, I want you to look at the street sign for 7th Avenue in Sterling. So you can see that 7th Avenue is, there's only one, so I'm looking at it, but there's 7th Avenue is a brown sign and Sterling is green. So most streets have green signs. If you see a brown sign while we're walking, or like an orangey sign, and I'm going to continue walking now, that means that it's historically landmark, part of the Park Slope Historical District. So that's what that means. And so while I know I am saying a rather sad story now, I'm talking about a plane crash, you can try to look at some of the buildings because the blocks that we're walking are landmarked, and so these buildings are rather important, or to someone they're important because they went through all the effort to save them. We'll talk more about the historical district soon, but the plane crash happened on this block, and you might be wondering, how did this happen? How did 2 planes just crash? There's like all that sky. How did 2 of them just interact with each other? In addition to that, there are a lot of measures put in place to make sure planes don't crash. You got people in the air saying, okay, you can go, red light, green light, things like that. By the way, I'm at St. John's Place, so I am taking a left and going up the block. Well, and this has to do with one of the reasons why that the plane crash isn't widely known by a lot of people. They really covered it up. There was a lot of corruption going on. People weren't trained like they were supposed to be. Equipment was not up to date, and it was known. And they went on this flight on a rainy, snowy day in December. It's almost Christmas, without the proper gear, on at least one of the planes, if not both, because they were from different companies. So it was United, but I feel like every airline has the word United in it, and it might not be around anymore, especially after this. It was really covered up. The cause is still not totally known. The airline companies and the government as well just wanted to shove it under the rug and forget about it. However, it actually is pretty easily forgotten. Looking at the street, there's almost nothing there commemorating to it. There is a thing in the hospital, but even I didn't know about that. And that's another reason why I've been doing this project. I have been living in Park Slope for 18 years. That's a lot longer than a lot of other people who've been living here, especially with all this gentrification pushing people out. That's a really long time. You think I would know this area better than anyone else. But I didn't know this, and there's another reason why it's especially shocking that I didn't know this. Because my grandma was there. She was there when the plane went down. She was obviously fine, from what I know. And she saw the plane go down. It went right over her head. And she was 8 months pregnant with my mom as well. It was December 16th, 1960, and my mom was born on January. So almost to the day, a month before my mom was born. That's really crazy to find out that not only this thing that seems like a pretty big deal, that you think would have a lot of history, commemorations, and things like that attached to it, also happened to someone in my family. Well, not happened to them, but they witnessed it. They witnessed the chaos. And I will link some photos. There's a lot of pictures of what actually happened, of the airline, the plane, and the fire trucks and things like that. It's really crazy to find out that this happened to my grandma, or that she was there for it. Not that it happened to her. I should stop saying it like that. But it's crazy to find out that this happened and that my grandma was there. Two things you think I would know. I would know about this, but I don't. And so there's a lot of history that I feel like has been forgotten, that's been pushed under the rug, intentionally or by accident. Not everything happens on purpose, but you might think, like, who needs to remember? This happened 60 years ago, so what? But it's important that we remember, because this is where we live, and it's important to know what happened here, and to respect everything that happened in the past, and to be aware of it. So right now, I'm coming up on 8th Avenue, and I see this rather tall building that's like beige shaped. It's not that pretty, but like on the side, there's like a lot of different bricks, and there are a lot of different colors. And now thinking about this plane crash, I'm like wondering why. Like, why is there different color bricks? And maybe it's part of the historical district, so they renovated it. I don't know. On the left side of the street that we're walking up, the 8th Avenue sign is not landmarked, but on the right side it actually is, which kind of crazy. So we're gonna actually, if you're on the left side of the street, we're gonna cross. I am, so I'm crossing. And we're gonna walk one little block up here. I wonder why some of the signs are black and some of them are red. Might be because this area, my earbud just fell off. This area was landmarked in waves. It wasn't all landmarked at once. But the Park Slope Historical District started its thing in July 1973. It organized and advocated by the community, by the Park Slope Civil Council, and it was one of the first historical districts in the city. Actually, the plane crash kind of led to the Park Slope Historical District being formed, because people saw the destruction that happened and they wanted to remember and preserve the buildings. Also, 1973, this is when the gentrification started happening, new build gentrification, taking buildings down, making them nicer. A lot of tenement houses that were housing multiple families in small spaces. They wanted to take those down and make townhouses that, like we see now, 2-3 stories, that are nicer for the people. So I'm at Lincoln Place now, so I'm going to make a right turn and go down the block. But this area, 8th Avenue and 9th Avenue, tend to be the richer areas. And also, so there's the name streets and the number streets. So we actually haven't seen any of the number streets yet. Park Slope is really big. It's a big neighborhood. And we're kind of been reserved in like one area right now. And it's kind of crazy because up here would be like the richest area, has always been the richest area. But just 3 avenues down, on the streets of 5th Avenue that we were walking, that's not the case. And this is a big thing in New York City in general. You go block to block and there's different vibes from one block to the next block. But these buildings here would have always been considered for the people who are richer, wouldn't have necessarily been considered for immigrants or things like that. So the Park Slope Historical District aimed to preserve these buildings when some of them started being taken down. So they're still fighting to save a lot of buildings today, and they have through time. And it really seems like from their site, they're trying to make every single block historic, which I'm not necessarily opposed to. Yeah. So most houses here that we see were built between the Civil War and World War I. There's a mix of mansions, which tend to be closer to the park, that shows that that's like where the richer people live. It's like the closer you are to the park, the nicer it is, and the closer you are to Flatbush, kind of like the nicer it is. So if you get to like the higher numbers, and like Park Slope, the highest number is like 16, and if you go past 16th Street, then you're in a different neighborhood, namely Sunset Park. And 4th Avenue is the lowest avenue. If you go past 4th Avenue, then you're in Gowanus. So you want to be in the name streets. Well, not you want to be, but the richer areas tend to be the name streets near 9th Avenue, the poor places, the worst places, the places that got gentrified last tend to be the near 4th Avenue and like 15th Street, things like that. So there's a mix of mansions, row houses, apartments, and institutional buildings. Most buildings are not over 3 stories. Now I'm at the Berkeley Carroll School, which one of the institutional buildings that we were just talking about, that's a prep school. Lots of prep schools by the park, by the way. But I'm just walking to 7th Avenue, and then we're going to take a left turn. So we kind of have a long walk until our next big landmark. So might actually start talking about it before we get there, because there's a lot of stuff that happened on like one block, and I don't want to spend 15 minutes there. We have like a 15-minute walk now. But before then, I just mentioned how it's important to respect and remember what happened in the area and space that we're occupying. So what better way than to talk about what I learned about in the history of Park Slope. So you may or may not know that Brooklyn was originally the home of the Lenape, a Native American group who had multiple clans who occupied New York, New Jersey, and Delaware. That's where they originally lived. This area would have been known as Lenapehoking, and they were a part of the Algonquin civilization. So the Munsee were one of the clans of the Lenape. They were present in New York City, so they would have been present in New York. Oop, I just stepped in a big puddle. When the Europeans came, things changed. Oh, by the way, Flatbush Avenue, it's loud here, let me wait till I pass. So I'm at Berkeley now, so we're just gonna keep walking until like 1st Street. So the numbers. Flatbush Avenue is one of the major streets that border Park Slope. And Flatbush Avenue, as well as Fulton Street, which is another really big street in Brooklyn, these were both originally Lenape roads that the Lenape used. And then when the Dutch and the Europeans came, the Dutch are Europeans, they're just the first ones that came, the roads, they stayed, and now they're really big roads in our society today. So that's another really cool thing to figure out, that like that street used to be used by Lenape, and it's that old, and it has had a history attached to it. But either way, when the Europeans came, they brought disease to the area, and it started the fall of the Lenape. There are not many Lenape still living in this area. Many of them have been pushed out, live in Canada or other regions towards the west. And there's still fights today to ensure that the Lenape are known, because a lot of people don't even know they exist. I didn't even know they existed until earlier this year. So there's been new movements now to recognize the Lenape and their presence here. One of the most common ones kind of requires no work, but is a start, is the Living Land Acknowledgement, which is an acknowledgement that a lot of institutions can make, where they basically just recognize that this is a Lenape area, that there's a Lenape presence here, and that this was not originally our land. So some notable organizations that have the Lenape Land Acknowledgement are the Brooklyn Public Library, the Brooklyn Museum, and the Botanical Gardens. So if you go there, even in the Brooklyn Public Library, there was actually an exhibit in a library, an art exhibit in a library for the Lenape poking area, and we visited it with our class. During the school year, they had like clothing that the Lenape would wear and a lot of information about it, and then they put out a lot of books that were about the Lenape and that topic. That's a really good way to get kids to know about their history. You know, they go to the library. A lot of kids like to go to libraries and visit, read books. I was not one of those kids, but a lot of kids like to do that. And this is a way for them to really like learn about that. It's another way to try to learn in a less biased manner, because you're actually seeing the clothes and you can make your own judgments about them, but it's not just a textbook telling you some information that you might not be able to trust. This is like what they actually wore. When the Europeans came, it was the Dutch initially, again, that started the fall of the Lenape, but they acquired Brooklyn, eventually became part of New York City. Oh, by the way, I'm on Carroll Street right now, right in front of a different key food. And there's a sign here that says, "Don't forget to read a book" on the tree. And now I'm continuing to walk. But that was a homeless man who used to live there, and every day he would say to everyone, "Don't forget to read a book," and I would always pass by him. And when he passed away, they put that there. So I wanted to mention that. But back on how the Dutch came to this area. Brooklyn was wild for a long time. They didn't do much with it. The first thing that actually happened was the park, where they made Wild Forest Brooklyn into less wild Forest Park. With the start of the park, that's actually, Park Slope grew because of the park. So it originally was considered like the suburbs, because there were the boats that would go to Manhattan and eventually the bridge. So this was like the suburb area. Now, you know, Park Slope is not the suburb area. Like, look at it. We've got building to building. By the way, I'm at Garfield Place. Just keep walking one more little block and then we're going to turn. So it was considered the suburbs, and they made mansions by the park because the rich people were there, because rich people tend to like to go to the suburbs. You know, immigrants, especially back then, tended to work at the docks. That's why there's a lot of immigrant presence in Carroll Gardens, which is closer to the water. This, a lot here too, but not as much, especially Italians who tend to work at the docks, and Red Hook had a strong Italian presence because docks. So it started with mansions near the park, and then that's one of the reasons why, as you get lower and lower and farther down, and also because Flatbush goes into Manhattan, goes into a bridge that goes into Manhattan. So the closer to Flatbush you are, the easier it is to get to work. There's a major road, so that's why Flatbush-centric and Park-centric, it was always mansions and really rich up there, and then the farther down you come, the more immigrants, the more regular houses, the more regular people, if you want to say it that way. But yes, that's the original history of how Park Slope was made. So we're going to continue now. I'm at First Street now. So there's a school here. So you can just make a right. I know my left and right. Make a right turn down the block. We're just going to walk down here. Hopefully it'll be a little quieter because it's a side street. Let me just give some brief knowledge now about Park Slope, about being a Brooklynite. Some things you may or may not know. I don't know where you're from, but here are some things. First, Park Slope is rather large. Like I said, the things that surround it are Flatbush Avenue, which to us now would be to the right. We kind of passed by it before, but we didn't directly see it. That's the major Lenape Road. The park, which we also did not see. I would also highly recommend that you go visit the area by the park, because again, that is where the mansion and the richest areas are, so they are the nicest, and it's really pretty there. And the park is really nice. But this is like a people's history, you know. Not that they're not people, but want to focus on what I relate to. To the left of us, the Prospect Park goes down until the highway. And to the south of us, it goes to 4th Avenue and not to the south, but like down, like where we're looking down. It goes to 4th Avenue. And there's the Gowanus Canal. So Park Slope is actually kind of secluded from other neighborhoods. It's very large. There's big chunks. Again, this chunk, we're kind of heading towards the center slope. There's North Slope, which is the named streets, center slope, which is the numbers, and then South Slope is anything past 10th Street. So it goes north, center, south in terms of like desirability, if you know what I mean. So that's Park Slope. It's kind of secluded from other places because we do have these things that actually like cut us out from things like the park, obviously. The expressway makes it hard to cross, and the canal also is hard to cross. There's only certain streets that you can cross over it. Who knows if that was intentional? I don't see why it would be, but yeah. Other things about being a Brooklynite, the things that I do relate to. These steps that you see in front of a house, they're called stoops. Not everyone knows that. The little places with the gates, some might call a front yard, is also known as an airway or area gate. Fire hydrants are also known as Johnny Pumps. Yeah, that's a thing. What else? Okay, this has actually happened to me a lot of times where I'll talk to someone I know. And by the way, I'm at 6th Avenue now, so let's take a left turn here and we're gonna go to 3rd Street. So we're on 1 street, we're gonna go to 3 Street, and then we're gonna make a right and go down. This has actually happened to people that I know who are from Manhattan, where they'll ask me where I got something, or I'll just tell them where I got something. Okay, I found it on the street. And you might even, if you come from a lifestyle like them, be like, what do you mean you found it on the street? Like, you picked up trash? Like, you found a rock on the street and you picked it up? Except not a rock, it's like a book. And they're always so confused and think that I'm picking up trash. But in Brooklyn, and I think in Queens too, it's very common to leave things on your stoop or in front of your areaway and have other people pick it up. You might have even seen it now. While you've been walking, you might see someone have a bag out with stuff in it. I'm literally passing by, I see a jacket someone's left on the gate for someone to take. Sometimes people leave books. It's raining now, so if people know it's going to rain, they normally try not to put things out because then they're going to get wet and yucky. But yeah, so if you see stuff, don't think normally if it's outside of the gate and it's just laid out there, that means it's free for takes. You can take it if you'd like it. That's what that means. And it's a good way to like give things and reuse. I see, what is this? Like a baby sled that someone left out. Like a sled for a very small child. Not a regular sled. Like it looks like a car seat, but a sled. Yeah, so like I wasn't even noticing while I was walking, and now I'm seeing a bunch of things, and people also leave bottles out too. I don't know if this is a common practice. Such a narrow worldview I have. If you see bottles left out, that's because people collect bottles, and you get 5 cents for each bottle. So you have people who walk around with like a lot of cans and bottles, and then they get money from it. So sometimes people leave them out so that other people can take it. I don't know if that's a common practice in the rest of the world. Right now, I'm at 3rd Street, so let us, if you can cross 3rd Street, because there is something I would like to talk about on the other side of the street. So let's cross, I'm crossing, and then we're going to make a right turn and walk down to 5th Avenue. So we're nearing the end of our journey now, or the latter half. I don't have like a mile map in front of me, so I can't say how far we are. Just something else I wanted to quickly add here is that if you are going to pick anything up on the street, do not take any furniture that has fabric and do not take any wicker. There are many a bug that live in these are their homes, okay? And too many stories of people who get these things, bring them home, and then swarms come out, all right? So no bueno. Do not take a mattress. Do not take like a couch that probably has a broken board in it. Those people might put free signs on it, but they really just don't want to call the garbage company to have them pick it up, okay? Do not take. That's a warning. So walking down 3rd Street, another thing I just wanted to mention about the stoops. There's a lot of culture behind stoops that I have experienced. You know, when my mom was growing up, her friends didn't have always a lot of things to do because they didn't have the internet and things like that, so they just sit on the stoop and talk. And that's something that we actually started doing over the pandemic. Me and my friends, we would sit on a stoop and talk because we couldn't really get close. We couldn't go inside, couldn't do a lot of things, so we would do the stoop chats. So stoop chats were something I think that kind of died, and the pandemic really brought them back to life because they were very common, and now they are again, but I think there was a long period where they were not very necessary. Now you might be walking and you see a house that just looks a little out of place. It's a little wonky donkey. That's because it is. I know nothing about this house. And there's actually normally a van too that's like a Scooby-Doo van that has like spray paint all over it. That's kind of similar to the spray paint on this house. So you can look and see if you see that. I think they're related. I'm not sure. I don't know anything about this house, but there's just always a bunch of crazy things here. And it's fun to look at. They have a lot of mirrors and things. And it changes too. Like right now, I guess it's near St. Patrick's Day. I don't know. There's St. Patty's Day things. Around Christmas, they have Christmas bulbs. They actually have some of the Christmas stuff in the back. But they have more of it at Christmas time. They put Valentine's things out. And I'm stopped in front of it right now. It says it's 410 3rd Street. It's really crazy. They have a lot of chains. I think it's to keep people away. I don't know why they have this. I should really find out because it's been here I'm continuing to walk down now. It's been here my entire life. It's been here my entire life and I don't know who lives there. I don't even know how to get in the house, really. I mean, there's a little way to get in. But that's something I should find out about. Talk about the history part. So that's something right there. I bet there's a New York Times article on there. But that's something that's the kind of thing that I really want to get from doing this. I want to I obviously know about that because I passed by it. But I want to find out about those little things right there and be like, you know about this? Yeah, you're a Park Sloper. You're an OG. You know, you're we know, we get it because we're from the same place. We got this history. We got this automatic bond just from living here. And I feel like I don't get that currently. But some things, like the stoop, I pick it up and it's not trash. My Queens friends get that too, but that's the things I want to get from this trip. That's the point. Things like that. Knowing the house on 3rd Street that's crazy? Yeah, I know you know. I just met you. I don't know who you are, but we both know. And now we're bonding. And now you know too. You listener know too. And now we're bonding right now. Although I cannot hear you, but I'm sure we're bonding in your eyes because now we both get it, right? So I'm almost at 5th Avenue now. We're going to cross and you might see a park. That is J.J. Byrne Park. So we're going to head over there. So back on 5th Avenue, closed streets once more. A lot of stuff happened in this park. You might see a little house in the middle. So the front part is a playground. It recently isn't 10 years ago, but I don't remember what it used to like, but I remember it getting constructed. I remember the new one opening up. So it recently got redone. Honestly, I think that this is a pretty unsafe park. And they recently redid this. There's just rocks where the sprinklers are, slippery rocks. So I'm going in the park. So go in the park, so there's an entrance right by the city bikes, by the bus stop. Just walk in there. And then as soon as you go in, you're gonna see that there's a house. So there's benches. If it's a nice sunny day, it's probably pretty crowded here. So you might not be able to get a seat. There might be a lot of running, potentially naked children going around. That's fine. I hope you're fine with that. I'm fine with that. The rocks are a little sus. But, so this is a house. This is the Old Stone House. It's called the Old Stone House, for it is old and it is stone. As you can see, it is 2 stories. And when I say old, this is old, man. This is really old. Now you can go inside. It's actually like a museum. It might be closed. It's closed often. I don't know when the hours are. There's signs on the front. There's a little old-looking gate. That's children that you hear. Even though it's raining, they still play. That's good. So this is the Old Stone House. Oh, it actually has the hours right on there. So it's open Friday, Saturday, Sunday, noon to 4, or by appointment, and you can call. And well, what happened here? So first, the house, this was obviously originally Lenape land. So the people who built this house, this land was taken from the Lenape as early as 1639. And this house was built in 1699 by Clay's, I can't pronounce it, but Clay's Archsenvecht and his son Hedrick Klassenvecht. Those are Dutch people. Yeah. In 1852, it was sold to Litchfield, who was a rich man who, there's a big mansion in the park that we didn't talk about, but you can visit. Big mansion in the park called Litchfield Villa. That guy owned all of this land, I think, at one point. I tried doing research on it. It was really hard to find. I wanted to include it. Then it was kind of out of the way, and it was really hard to find stuff on it. But I would recommend going there and looking into it. It's a really nice mansion, and it's really big. So it was sold to him. Then the big history from this place has to do with the Revolutionary War. I mean, if you're even looking at the signs in there, it says Revolutionary War. So this was like a focal point in the Battle of Brooklyn, which is a battle that we did lose. So the head of it was William Alexander, who has a school, if you look to the left, named for him right there. That's MS-51, the one where the kids from the gang earlier went to, known as JS-51, also known, if you see the big sign, William Alexander School. So that's a middle school. And it's still here. So he was in that fight. He inspired the name of the school. We lost the Battle of Brooklyn, but the old stone house was where the height of the battle was. And this house was there during the battle. So there was an actual war here that this building was there for. I'm sure it got a lot of restoration through time. I've never heard anything about saying it got destroyed or rebuilt or anything like that. I didn't encounter that at all. I feel like they would have had that on their website. So from what I know, this is actually there. You can walk around. You can see it has a little gate. It's got a little mailbox too. And walk around it if you would like. That is the Old Stone House. But in this area as well, in this park on this street, was also the first gay pride parade in Brooklyn. It was June 14th, 1997. So that was, did I just say the first in New York? It was the first in Brooklyn. It was the third in New York. I don't know what I said, but that's what it actually is. So I actually did not know this, despite living here, that in Park Slope there is a large lesbian community. Large gay community, but mainly lesbians. I did not know this. Apparently this is known information. I guess just thought that there was this many lesbians everywhere. I guess I didn't think much of it. Perhaps it's a good thing. But there's a lot of lesbians in Park Slope. So around that time there was pride parades going on, and they wanted one in Brooklyn, so they chose this location because there's a large lesbian community here. There's a lesbian archives located in this neighborhood already. Was a trans homeless shelter here, and there's also another location that we'll visit later that was female, gay, and trans led. I didn't know the Pride Parade still goes on. So if you're here in June, there might be a fair going on Fifth Avenue that's about 9 blocks long. And if it's later in the day, there might be a parade. So the parade still goes on. It's still happening, which is really great. And I didn't know this is the first one in Brooklyn. That's a revolutionary thing that happened, in this area, in this park. So I'm going to walk towards the school now because that's going to be our next destination. The lesbians are actually, that sounds a little rude saying it like that, but lesbian people actually are being pushed out of this area as well because of the gentrification, because super gentrification, middle class people being pushed out. So I'm sure there's lesbian millionaires out there, but most people are not millionaires, so most people are being pushed out. And a lot of them are moving to Windsor Terrace, a neighboring neighborhood. Another thing is Ginger's Bar, located 2 blocks away on Fifth Avenue. I'm heading back up to Fifth Avenue now. So I'm on 4th Street now, so I went out from the park Down the block, I see a Pep Boy Autos, Blinds, and I'm like across the street from school. I'm walking back up to Fifth Avenue. Okay, I just had to pause the thing. All right, so we're by the school. We're walking up. So Ginger's Bar is gay and Irish led. It's the last lesbian bar in Brooklyn. Did not know this. I mean, I knew it was a bar because it's called Ginger Bar. I didn't know it was a gay bar. I don't go to bars often. They always had a flag out there, but I didn't know. And I did not know that it was lesbian led. And I definitely did not know that it was the last lesbian bar in Brooklyn. And nationwide, there's only 21. 3 lesbian bars in the city, and in the nation, only 21. So back in the day, the Italian mafia actually controlled most of... Oh, by the way, if you're on this block on a Sunday, there's probably going to be a farmer's market, because that's always here. So get some apple slices. They normally give out free samples. Because I'm about to leave it, so I just wanted to mention. The Italian mafia actually controlled a lot of the lesbian bars because it was illegal. So the Italian mafia would provide safety for those in the lesbian bar and for things like that. But then the lesbians, they weren't really controlling it, leading it. They didn't really have a right. So now it's obviously not illegal. I can actually see it right now because I'm in front of the school. So there's a lot of benches here. So you can just sit on one if you would like. Not going to be here too long, but we're almost done. And I can see Ginger's Bar. They had a rough time because of the pandemic, but luckily they pulled through, back open for business, and get a drink there if you want. I hear they said online that a lot of women, even if they're not gay, like to go there because it's just a pretty safe and fun space. So back in front of the school, I'm sitting down now because we've done a lot of walking. There, remember that race-based violence that we were talking about at the beginning of our tour, just a couple of blocks away from here? Well, remember the members of those schools went here, and it's actually suspected that the bombings that happened were a result of white parents in the day boycotting black kids being able to participate in after-school programs. So the school has a much bigger part of that history than just being the place where the kids in the gang went to. And these issues, honestly, they've been going on today. There's a lot of inequity and inequality when it comes to middle school and elementary schools. This is because of the redlining that we talked about earlier. New York City neighborhoods are very segregated, and the school districts are zoned, meaning that you can only go to a school in your district, unless it's like a special school. There's a couple special ones. But most of them, you can only go to a school in your district. So for that reason, it tends to be all the white kids go to one school, all the black kids go to another school, and things like that. Then the schools that get the more money are the white schools. They're the better funded. They're the good, so to say, schools. This is one of those schools. So in the recent years, there's been a lot of arguments over how to diversify the school. And it seems like no matter what anyone does, no one's happy, which makes sense because if part of it is you want to diversify the schools, but in order to do that, you're taking away spots from kids who do live here, which tend to be white kids. So there's a lot of anger when it comes. And I won't say that people don't want black kids in the school. Maybe some people are arguing it at that point of view. I don't think that's not what I see when I see the fights. But the arguments tend to be they just want their kids to go to the better school, and they think that the worst kids coming to their school are going to bring more violence. That's definitely, parents definitely have fears and say that, and I babysit a lot, and I hear some parents say that and be like, I better keep my mouth shut or I'm going to lose my job. So this school, this district is District 15, and it is actually a rather diverse district. Yet most of the white and privileged kids are concentrated into just 3 middle schools, including this one, MS 447, which I went to, and New Voices, which is a talent school, which is They say it's Sunset Park, but it's not, because, I don't know, some people. But, so they're still speaking out a lot against it. The big efforts being made are making the schools, instead of screened, which means they look at your grades, they do this process called adopt, where they take 50% of kids who have middling grades, 25% who have above average, and 25% who have low average. Some will just do lottery systems. That's becoming more popular throughout the years. I do feel like, because I have babysat kids who went to my elementary school, that the elementary school was more diverse than when I went. You know, I was a kid back then. I wasn't really paying attention. But the kids nowadays just have, I do think that the diversity is increasing, but also they just have a lot more knowledge on these things. And I think it has to do with, during the pandemic, it has to do with the Black Lives Matter protest. Because, to be honest, I didn't know much about these types of issues until that happened. And it felt like it was probably the same for the little kids. And it got to a point where parents couldn't just not tell their kids. Especially, this neighborhood has a lot of liberals, so those are the type of people who would say it as well. So the issue, while not race-based, is still, with the school, is still, it still feels not right. Like something is still going on. Wow, so right behind me there's a mask that has, there's a sign that has a kid with a mask and someone wrote on it, no masks. So that's great. So yeah, something's not right here. And it feels like it's a little too late to fix the issue. Like it should have been fixed a long time ago, but not that it shouldn't be fixed. It's really important that everyone has the same access to education, because it really changes kids' lives. So yeah, it really changes kids' lives. So I actually think it really changed my mom's life. So I'm going to continue walking now. So we're walking towards 5th Street, 6th Street. We're going that way. So we're walking along 5th Avenue along the little walks. But I really felt like it affected my mom, actually. She went to Catholic school. Catholic school's still there. I went there for Sunday school. I will say that it made me not Catholic. But I did get a Mickey Mouse stuffed animal out of it that I love dearly. And so I would do it all again, the 8 years of torture. For Mickey Mouse, because I love Mickey Mouse. But either way, she went to the school. She had, and you can see right now across the street is Ginger's Bar, and it says open. But she went to Catholic school. She had teachers who would beat her. She would ask questions, and they would just scare her into not wanting to ask questions anymore. And I think that made her hate education. Because who wouldn't? And I think that happens to a lot of kids, especially if they have issues going on with their life, and then they have a not supportive school that is underfunded, that just clearly shows that they don't care about the students. Which I work with a lot of students, so I see that often, that where schools clearly just show they don't care, especially after pandemic. I mean, I would feel like the school I go to, that happens, Hunter College. Really common in college to feel like the teachers don't care about you. Not all of them. I legally have to say that as this is a class project, but a lot of them don't give two kablooies if you do good or bad. So equality in education is a really big issue, and like so many things, it tends to be lower privilege, which tend to be not white people who experience the worst sides of these systems.
You want to kiss the thing, you could do another one.
So there's that. So we're gonna keep walking. Passing by a restaurant that's Coco Roco. Been boarded up for like 3 years now. So they must own the building, because no way they're paying rent. It's been boarded up. But it's like a really good restaurant. So I'm going to start talking about the next thing because I can see it. We're not in front of it, but I can see it. So if you look, I'm on 7th Street by Uncle Luigi's. I see a big sign that says Save on 5th. So that building, the end half of this tour has been a lot happier than the beginning, luckily. That building, Save on 5th, you might see a little sign next to it that says Bax. I actually went to Bax. And you might see if you're on 7th Street now, this building that's the Slope Gourmet Deli also has to do part of this story. So Bax is now like a dance theater place, and Save on Fifth is like a convenience store, okay? But it did not used to be that way. Not that that's a bad thing, but it used to be the Brooklyn Women's Martial Arts Center, also known as the Center for Anti-Violence and Education. So this was a major organization. I'm fumbling with my umbrella now. I'm stuck. Okay. It was founded in 1974, and they taught, or they're still around, they're just not in this location anymore. They taught self-defense and karate to women and girls. And you know, I'm very unclear now of whether I actually participated in this organization. I feel like I did, because it said that it was in that building, the Slope Gourmet Deli, that they moved there. And I did go to a karate center that was there, that is now closed. So I can't say, but because it didn't say on their website, it's one place that was location, so I was trying to look it up, but it was really difficult. Anyway, they taught self-defense and karate to women and girls. It was the first place in the city to teach self-defense to transgender people and to people living with AIDS. They moved locations eventually. It was non-competitive and affordable, and it was part of an anti-violence feminist movement in the 60s and 70s to teach self-defense and help people who faced abuse. So I'm standing in front of the Citibank across the street just looking at the building now. It was on the second floor. You can see that actually right now there's like a trans gay pride flag in the window. I do know it is the dance center now. It's not the martial arts center. I used to go to the dance center actually when I was little. I was lucky. I got to go there for a little bit. But they stood against police brutality, especially towards Latina and Black women. And they helped survivors of gender-based violence and disabled women. They were started as lesbian friendly. They eventually became lesbian led. Again, there was and has been a lot of lesbians in this neighborhood, and has been very accepting towards those people from the beginning. They trained transgender people, as I already said, and they changed their name eventually, which I said in the beginning, to accommodate for the fact that they weren't only teaching cis women. And so I'm going to keep walking now because we're almost at the end now. So we're going to go to 9th Street and we're going to take a right, and then we're going to go down to the train station. I'll walk you there because I'm nice like that. But yeah, so they changed their name to accommodate the fact that they weren't only teaching cis women, they were teaching trans women. And when I went to the program, there were boys there, if it was the same program. But that's just, I go and Save on Fifth all the time. I went to that dance studio for a little bit. I went to the other karate place that might be part of it. Did I know that these places that I was at, if not the organization that I was participating in, was so like revolutionary for the neighborhood, for the city? No. And that's incredible to me. And that's again why I did this, so I can look in little places and see the things that most people aren't going to see. And I know there's so many things. So I'm at 9th Street, so I'm making a right. We're going to walk down. You should see McDonald's. Just go that way. There's like so many things that I don't know about. Then I know. I did a lot of research. I know there's a lot of things I missed. That there's a brick out of place on this building, and that brick has a whole story behind it. And there's a crack on the street. I just choked a little, sorry. And there's a crack on the street, and that has a whole story behind it. And all of these buildings and all of these places have memories. So if buildings could speak, am I right? Like the stories they could tell. Funny, sad, happy, annoying. They could say so many things. It'd be really interesting. So we're coming towards the end of the tour. I'm at the post office now. Something I probably could have gotten a lot of information on. But it's okay. Gonna go to the corner because that's where the train station is, the R train. Also the F&G, also B61 bus. Just, walking you home because that's the respectful thing to do. Oh, there's something else to mention actually. See this house here, this blue house with flowers on the top? that's big, kind of sticks out, has a big airy way. It's a park, it says folk music lesson bands. My grandma almost bought this house. Now it's landmarked, actually. It's a landmarked building. My grandma almost bought it. That was kind of incredible to hear. So, and like not only am I finding so many little stories that happened in the city, I'm finding out things that actually happened to my family. Because I got to talk to my mom while doing this too. And, you know, she knows a thing or two. She's been here longer than me. So, and she's been here longer than the yuppies. So, yeah, 4th Avenue, like, is getting major redone. Like this building here that's on the corner, that's new. The one on the other corner, that's new. The church isn't, that's been here. The check cashing place, that's been there. But the other place, like, it's all getting redone. Like, it's still, like, we're, like, the history's still being erased, and we have to make sure it's not. And we just have to remember it. You know, sometimes change is good. There's questions, you know, with gentrification, like, I want nicer places, but I don't want to have to push poor people out in order for places to get safer and nicer and for there to be better education. So there's questions about how that actually gets done. And that's something you can think about. You be a politician. Either way, here's a train station. So thank you for coming on my tour. And I'm probably going to do a proper goodbye segment when I get home. So bye-bye.
So that was my walking tour. After all of that, that is just a bit of the research that I got from everything that I looked at. The original walking tour was going to be like 7 miles long, and then I realized that legs hurt eventually. So this walking tour was much better. I think it was a good length. I hope you're not too tired. 2 miles is, you know, almost 3 miles is kind of a lot. So I hope you're not too tired. It's a nice little workout, you know. Hopefully it's a nice day. It's not raining like when I did it, and you were able to enjoy the scenery and the trees and the park, and maybe pause a couple of times and get some ice cream or whatever. Most of all, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you leave thinking about what happened in Park Slope, how the history there, how some of that maybe applies to your neighborhood. Maybe you'll see a building that's newer in a sea of buildings that are older, and you'll think, I wonder if there was a struggle for that building not to get made. Or maybe there's a large high-rise somewhere where normally there's only 3-story buildings, and you're like, was there anyone there to complain about that tall building coming out of nowhere? Or maybe you'll see some mom and pop shops in your area closing down because rent's going too high. And you can maybe start identifying if gentrification is happening in your area. And if it is, try to preserve you and your people's history. Or maybe you're in the same boat as me and you don't really feel connected to where you're from. So then you have to just make a walking tour of your own. Then in the end, you'll feel pretty good. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Fingers crossed I get an A as well. And bye-bye for realsies this time. Have fun and safe travels. Adios.